Hi there folks, and welcome back to the channel, and welcome back to our continuing epic that is the I'm Not Feeling Good arc. Yes, I am in fact still sick, but that's not going to stop me from talking about the first episode of Pet. But before we get into things though, I do want to remind you all that if you would like to have your name shouted out in next week's Pet video, then be sure to share this video around on the internet, and then tag me at JoJo Talks Too Much over on Twitter, and I will be sure to shout your name out in next week's video. So with that said, we're going to go ahead and dig into it, and I want to point out the initial scene that we opened this episode with, and it's with, what's this character's name? Katsuragi, pointing out that hospitals are always so dreary. Yeah, no shit, dude. Holy... What a way to open your show with this, like, intensely dark, horridly sad scene where there's this kid who's just, like, glued to the TV watching anime. And it's the same anime over and over and over again. Like, he just can't stop watching it. And he clearly has some sort of, like, mental issue since he keeps bashing his friggin' head off the wall unit. And his mom is, like, contemplating suicide because her husband is, like, abandoning her because he doesn't, like, he feels like it's her fault that the kid's messed up. And, like, why are you gonna just drop that on my lap at the beginning? Don't get me wrong, it properly sets the mood. So, it's not a bad thing. It's just like, holy crap, dude, that's a lot to throw at a viewer all at once. And yeah, this asshole Katsuragi is right. It is definitely a very dreary scene to open the show with. And Katsuragi himself is a very dreary dude. And I would like to point out that Katsuragi is actually voiced by Shunsuke Sakuya, who is a seiyuu that I only know for one thing, and that is Kashiwagi from Yakuza. Now here's the thing, right? Between Katsuragi from Pet and Kashiwagi from Yakuza, they're both very strict dudes, right? But when I saw that Sakuya was voicing Katsuragi, I assumed he'd be similar to Kashiwagi, and they're both very strict. But Kashiwagi is strict, but he is ultimately sort of like, he cares about the people that he's working with. Katsuragi, I'm pretty sure he just hates everybody and everything. This is only like the second scene of the episode, and it's just Katsuragi like smoking in the middle of a hospital and then berating a nurse when she tells him to stop smoking. And his friend has to tell him, like, dude, why are you smoking in a hospital? Have you lost your mind? And he's like, oh, don't tell me what to... Like, what an asshole! But, like, again, it's, like, it may be dark and dour, but, again, that is the vibe that the show is going for. So while I was sort of like, this world is mean, man, at the same time, that's what they're going for. So is it bad? No. It just may not be for everybody. And I'm not gonna lie, I'm not sure how I feel about Pet. Ultimately, I think it's pretty well handled. It's just, it's a very dour... type of tone to the whole thing, and like the man says, hospitals are always so dreary, and some shows can be very dreary, and that line perfectly sums up this episode. I think it is in a dark and sort of grim first impression that the show gives you, but at the same time there is this sort of light at the end of the tunnel. There's humor to be had here as well. I do think that there's a lot more to the show than just edge. I just worry that maybe it will slip into that more and more as we go. And I want to root for it, because Geno Studio is like the little studio that could, okay? Like, they made Golden Kamuy, and for some reason, everybody and their mother sleeps on Golden Kamuy, and that hurts. They also made Kokoku, which was another good show that everybody sleeps on. It's like, man, Geno, I want good things for Geno Studio, damn it. And, like, I don't know, it's just, this project was such a left field pick too, because the original creator's manga, Ranjo Miyake, no offense to Miyake, but her work's not that well received either, and Pet is like an older manga as well, so I was kind of surprised that Geno would pick this. And the director as well, Takehiro Omori, is the director of stuff like Durarara and Natsume's Book of Friends. Now, Durarara, controversially, I'm not a fan, but Natsume's Book of Friends is a series that really looks more up my alley. But by comparison, this dude made Natsume's Book of Friends, which, no offense to Natsume's Book of Friends, but doesn't look anywhere near as, like, weird as Pet does. And believe me, folks, Pet is weird. By the time the episode ended, I was just sort of, like, staring at my screen, wondering who the asshole was that snuck into my house this afternoon and slipped acid into my green tea. Because that's the only explanation. I'm not even 100% sure if Pet is even a real show and not just some fever dream induced by my illness. I will say this, though. If you want a sort of, like, grim and gritty weird ass show, then Pet is your shit. Like, and I do feel like there's gonna be episodes that I'm like really on board with, because there's moments in this episode that are just like so dark, but yet at the same time so visually interesting. Like that scene of who I believe to be Satoru, the kid with the scar on his head. We see him again later on, like more grown up. Later on in the episode, and we get this scene of him meeting Mr. Madasa, whose name I feel like I wrote incorrectly, but I don't know. You guys will correct me in the comments, I'm sure. But Madasa is a character who I really liked as soon as he was introduced, because he's the one who tells Katsuragi to knock it the hell off, and he also is like genuinely interested in trying to help Satoru through his shit. And apparently they have like some kind of ability where they can like go into their own subconscious or like go into each other's dreams or something. We did know that there was going to be like some weird dreamlike qualities to Pet, since that is in the description, but seeing it play out is very interesting. And what I love is how dark Satoru's mental state is, or at least like what he, like the turmoil that he sees his mom going through. And Madasa takes Satoru and takes him to one of his memories, and it's this gorgeous green field, and he tells him like how to make like to make two areas of his mind, two areas of his subconscious, and then lock the door, make a peak and make a valley. And with your peaks, it's all your good memories, and your valley, it's all your bad memories. And then you lock that door and you don't let anybody in there. That's just yours. And I think that's really interesting. And I also think it's interesting that Madasa would introduce this concept by actually bringing Satoru into his happy memory. That level of like, I'm showing you this because you, like, I feel like you need somebody there. Like, I already want to see the relationship between Satoru and Madasa. They seem like they're going to have some sort of like teacher-student type dynamic, and I'm really curious to see how that plays out through the rest of the episode. However, after this, we basically stop hanging out with Satoru, Madasa, and, well, we do actually hang out with Katsuragi again later in the episode, but Satoru basically gets sidelined for the rest of the episode, which is weird because the way the opening plays out, it makes it seem like he's the main character of Pet, but I don't really think there is a main character, honestly, because even in this episode, it's mainly focused on Kenji than it is on anybody else. And Kenji, my man, got played hard, and I feel bad for Kenji, if I'm totally honest. Kenji didn't deserve that shit. Like, Kenji got roped into some nefarious stuff, and I mean, like, not so much that he was like an unwilling participant, but he didn't mean to stumble upon what he saw. And so now he's being like, his friend is basically brainwashed of like in some way, and then convinced to drive off a cliff. And then they make it look like his friend Yokota was like responsible for murder or something. It's weird. And honestly, Kenji is this character who you just, at least for me, I felt bad for him like the entire episode. This dude just has a bad trip the whole way through, like a bad trip, I'm telling you. All the dude was meant to do was drop off a gun and a spare key into the car, but he forgets the spare key, so he gotta go all the way back, and that's when he sees Yokota in the car, and that's where you find it, like that's where you see the scene of Yokota dying. And Kenji is obviously like distraught by this, because Yokota isn't, like, he's a jerk to Kenji from what we gather, but they are still boys to some degree, so that loss still hit. And so Kenji, knowing that they're probably going to come after him next, is trying his best to sort of make it, like, get out of the situation. And he's confronted by Katsuragi. And the scene of Katsuragi confronting Kenji is really interesting. And again, I just feel bad for Kenji the whole way through, because he keeps trying to get a grip on the situation. And at every turn, this poor friggin' dude is just, like, the door is closed on his face. He cannot get out of the situation for the life of him. And I was honestly surprised, because Kenji is a character who I didn't have in my notes. I doubt we'll see again based on how the episode ends. But honestly, he's probably my favorite character already. Like, he was my favorite character, and he's a throwaway character. I don't know what that says, but I'm telling you, this poor dude has, like, the worst trip ever. And I wonder if the whole show is just meant to feel like a bad trip. Because Kenji is just, like, tries to, like, get away. Like, he even has this line of him saying, like, I'm gonna go to Bali, but really I'm not going to Bali. I'm actually gonna go to LA. And then he finds this, like, the two roommates who we know to be Hiroki and Tsukasa, and stuff pops off of them later. But they tell him, like, oh yeah, this, like, came in the mail for you. I tried to give it to you, but you weren't there. and he opens it, and the letter just says, like, not going to Bali, bought plane tickets for LA, like, you ain't going anywhere. And then he sees, like, an eyeball on the wall, and I'm just sitting there thinking, like, okay, what is happening? Is it a dream? Can they force people to see trippy shit? I really don't know, and I really don't care, because the twist reveal honestly made me kind of laugh, and it's the idea that Hiroki and Tsukasa, the two characters who we see at the beginning of the episode, the two characters who are renting the former flat that Yokota was using. Kenji trusts these two. He's been like not like living with them, but renting the upstairs bedroom to them for a little while now. And then it's revealed, oh no, Hiroki and Tsukasa are actually the Crushers, the group of people, quote unquote, that Katsuragi was sending after Kenji. And I was thinking, like, with a name like Crushers, they really gotta have, like, they gotta be like these big burly dudes, but not. It's these two Bishonen dudes, and I'm kind of all about that, because what does the Crushers mean? Like, what does that entail? What do? Do they crush the spirit? Do they crush the mind? I don't know, because at the end of the episode, Kenji's okay, and honestly, I was really happy about that. Because again, I feel like my boy Kenji didn't deserve a lot of the shit that happened to him in this episode. Sure, he's not exactly the goodest person on the planet. He is doing some shady jobs for some shady people, but he's not he based off what I've seen of him in this episode, he doesn't strike me as a totally horrible person. You know what I mean? Like, he just seems like a dude who is willing to kind of bend the rules a little bit. And I don't know, I kind of hope maybe, like, he'll pop back in here and there as, like, the bartender of, like, the bar that the three main characters hang out in. That'd be kind of cool, honestly. But that is essentially where we leave this episode. That's where we leave these characters for now. And we find out that the entire episode was really just meant to serve as a day in the life for Hiroki, Satoru, and Tsukasa, these three characters, as well as Katsuragi, too. But basically just showing what it is that these three characters do, how they use this weird ability they have, and it honestly leaves me very curious to see what it is that they do. Like, are they contracted by people to do certain jobs, or like what do their abilities allow them to do? I need a little bit more ground rules for how this shit works, because right now it's just dream moon logic. Right now we just don't know enough about the main three, nor do we know really much about anybody except for Kenji, this throwaway character. So I am very curious to see if the next episode can actually flesh these characters out a bit, because I do feel like there's advantages and disadvantages to having a sort of cold open day in the life type of premiere. Because when you do this type of premiere, you actually allow these characters to just carry about a normal day, and we, the audience, get a grip of what it is that they do by actually seeing them do the shit in action. However, in my opinion, the downside with these day in the life type of premieres means that we don't really get a good sense of these characters, and when you're somebody who cares more about characters than plot, that can be an issue. And I just don't feel like I really know anybody yet. And hopefully the next episode can actually flesh out some of these characters. I'd like to learn a little bit more about Hiroki. So far, he's my favorite of the three. And yeah, I don't know. I'm interested to see where this show goes. Overall, though, I do think that this first episode is pretty cool. It's not quite my cup of tea. It's a little too dark for me, but at the same time, I do want to come back for an episode or two just to see how these characters get fleshed out, how the world works, stuff like that. So yeah, color me, at the very least, intrigued. Overall, everybody, while I was initially going to give this episode a C, I think Kenji's cool, so I'm going to give this episode a B. I would watch a spin-off about Kenji. He just seems like a cool dude. And that's gonna do it for today's video, everybody, so I hope you guys enjoyed, and before we go, as always, I have to give a big thank you to the good folks over on Patreon, especially those in the Earl Grey tier: Andrew W., Calvin A., Crowbar of Irony, Daniel G., Digger the Fox, Dominic G., Ionos, Urza, Ginkutaku, Godzilla Fan, No For Nothing, Maria Teresa, Marshall B., Mirth Mouser, Cell, Shadow Creative, Sipco Games, Somastan, Stephen G., Sakochi, Tristan G., and Verdon. A huge thank you to all of you in the T Squadron for your continued support, and if you too would like to join the T Squadron, then be sure to check out the first link in the description to check out our Patreon page, see all the cool rewards you can get over there, as well as access to our Patreon exclusive Discord for as little as $1 a month. And with that said, we're going to wrap up today's video, everybody, so thank you all once again for watching, and if you are feeling stressed out today, then you go have yourself a warm cup of tea, and I will talk to you all again real soon.